raised right here in this church, and then went to college, and then quit going to church for the longest time. And then I was asked to come back to a smaller church, and that's really where my church service started. I was a PPR chair for 10 years at this church, chairman of the board, chairman of the finance committee, chairman of trustees at one point in time, and also the chairman of the cemetery committee. It has not always been easy. My experiences have been god awful at times, the way that people get treated within the church. I have been hurt by the church. I related to Pastor Kenneth's message really well the other day, because I like to say I've had every knife stuck in my back, from a butcher knife to a butter knife. But you just have to keep going. And yes, the church is a good place, and people are not always the nicest people in the world. You know, God said that we should love one another as we love ourselves, and that's the key. Because number one, you have to be able to look in the mirror every morning and love yourself before you can expect to love others. Jesus had every person in the spectrum as his followers, from the tax collectors to the prostitutes to the poor fishermen. But you know, I can only imagine there was a few arguments and fussing and fighting, and that sometimes people weren't the nicest to one another. And that's okay. We're just human. And so now you have all these personalities within the church that are just as different as night and day, trying to get along. Well, that's not easy to do unless you truly love yourself and are able to take a look at this and say, you know what? I love them. I might not like that personality, but I don't have to be ugly, and we can all get along, and we can move forward as a church, because that's what all God wanted. Like I said, I worked for the church for 10, 12 years. I left out all the way. I gave it all up because it got to be too much for me to handle the ugliness within the church. It took me 10 years after it was all over with. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on the things that I did, and I have learned to look myself into the mirror, look myself into the eyes. If I don't like the person that's looking back at me, I do what it takes to try to change that part that I do not like. It was hard at first, but after a lot of reflection, a lot of praying, a lot of sitting on my front porch thinking about those days that were so bad to me in the church, yeah, I did have some fault. I did. I finally realized that sometimes I didn't like the man in the mirror, and started making those changes. I still got a long way to go. I've made great strides in that. I've made great strides with dealing with people in the church, because people in the church have to deal with me. It's a two-way street that I found out. And so the more love I show them, the more love I get back. And that's a good feeling. Not that the fact that, you know, that I needed to hear it, but they love me enough to come by and just a few words made me feel good for the day. It made me realize that maybe I need to show the love somewhere else. Because right now is probably the happiest I've been in a long time with myself and with the church. Because I have found a way to love myself that I can love others and not have to deal with or take it personally when somebody comes up to me and is real ugly to me or says something I don't like. I can love that person now because I love myself, and I don't have to react like I used to. I'll tell you something else. I had cancer back in 2000. It was a very bad cancer. I was at a small church. And they knew what I was fixing to go through. I haven't been through the surgery, or I hadn't been, all I knew is what I had and how we were going to fix it. And then next thing you know, all of a sudden I had a hand laid on me from an older member of the church. Well, then that one turned to two, turned to three, and finally the whole congregation laying their hands. They didn't have to do that. That was them showing their way of loving me, not one person said not one thing. They didn't have to. I knew I was loved. And so those are powerful things. You don't, like you said, you don't have to say anything. A simple act of kindness, a simple act of love. It's not that hard. Only you got to love yourself first. And if you're not there, maybe you need to look in the mirror every morning and make some changes.